Okay, welcome, welcome, welcome. Take a look at what we got going on today, folks. We're going to start out with a little bit of Quizlet Live. Then we're going to read an upfront article together. And we're going to also spend a good chunk of today working on the week 2 portion of that Unit 6 document. Speaking of which, it is a good idea, or is it good for you to take note that you have got Friday as your last day to turn in anything from Unit 5. You guys got me? So the last unit that we were on, okay, that is going to be closing down after this Friday because this is the second week that we're working on that executive branch. Does that make sense, everybody? Good, 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 good. Okay, so no ifs, no ands, no buts when that thing closes down. In fact, I might just put a reminder on Schoology about that being basically another due date for you, just like as a reminder that if you haven't turned in that Unit 5 stuff, it is going to be there for you to do. So, any questions before we get going on this? None? All right, would everybody for me right now go to Quizlet.live, please? Go to Quizlet.live. Okay, so there is your code. If you can't see that already, 792-665. Let's get everybody on there, please. Also, while we're talking about this, what is goofy about the schedule this week, folks? Unless we have any juniors in here. Right, so tomorrow, who are the only people coming to school? Like in person? Just the juniors. Does everybody understand that? Good? Okay. And then we'll get back to it on Wednesday with, what I would say is our regular schedule, but I guess there is nothing regular about what we've been dealing with. So, most of your classes, I'm assuming, will have some type of distance learning going on for you, whether that's just work or an actual meeting. You're going to want to see what your teacher wants to do with that because a good chunk of the teachers are going to be proctoring or going to be watching kids take the ACT in some capacity during like your class time. You guys get me? Okay, so like what I'm doing for my classes tomorrow is I'll be posting like a video. They'll be watching this video, in fact, the one that I'm recording right now, about what we're going to be doing, and then they'll be working on that. So let's see, we got 23, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Missing just a handful of you. You got about 30 seconds to get on, and then we're going to play this thing. Here we go. Last call. All right, there are your spirit animals, folks, and they're racing. All right, here we go, round two. And they're lost somebody, but they're racing. All right, this is it, folks. This one's for all the Tostitos. And they're racing. Nice job, folks. All right, would everybody for me right now go to Schoology, and I want you to click on that executive branch folder. Underneath that executive branch folder, you will find something titled Upfront Articles. It looks a little something like this. Okay. This is the one that we want, The Changing Face of America. The Changing Face of America. Go ahead and open that bad boy up. I'm going to take this copy of it. Everybody can access this? We're good? Excellent. All right. I'm assuming that everybody has access to that. I'm going to begin reading here in just a moment. Here we go. So I always like to download it so that I can zoom in a little bit farther. You guys are probably better at manipulating this than I am, but there is where you will find that. And that's exactly what I'm going to read from right now. So here we go. The Changing Face of America. The U.S. is becoming much more racially and ethnically diverse. How will that alter the nation's identity? In the Yakima Valley, in central Washington state, has so many apple, pear, and cherry farms that it's known as the nation's fruit basket. It's home to more than 100 sprawling vineyards. The majestic peak at Mount Rainier rises over the lush fields and thriving orchards. In many ways, it's a perfect picture American landscape. But this community of nearly 94,000 people is quintessentially American in another, more surprising way. The number of Latinos here has doubled in just one generation, now making up almost half the total population. Just making sure that everybody can hear me. Typically, I like to mute myself when I'm in the middle of reading. Robert Ortiz, 17, has lived that transformation. There are a lot more events and opportunities for Latinos in Yakima, says Ortiz, a senior at Yakima's Eisenhower High School, where he's student body president. Even in just the past few years, he's seen a big change. I noticed Spanish being spoken a lot more compared to my freshman year, says Ortiz, whose parents came from Yakima to Mexico about 30 years ago. People are getting a lot more comfortable. The changes in this farming valley mirror demographic trends in many U.S. cities and counties where the population is becoming increasingly more diverse. In the past 2 decades, 109 counties in 22 different states, from California to Kansas to North Carolina, went from majority white to having populations in which people of color make up the majority, according to a recent report by the Pew Research Center. Monumental shift. America is becoming more diverse, and according to recently released 2018 data from the Census Bureau, that diversity is increasingly spread out across the country and touching a much wider swath of Americans. There's no question that the U.S. is growing more racially and ethnically diverse, says Mark Mather of the Population Reference Bureau. And there's going to be a really rapid increase in diversity over the next couple generations. The Census Bureau has projected that white people could make up at less than 50% of the U.S. population by about 2045. Already, people of color make up the majority of the population in 5 states, plus Washington, D.C. The same is true in many major U.S. cities, including New York, Las Vegas, and Memphis. But unlike in decades past, people of color are no longer concentrated in major urban centers. They now outnumber white people in 372 of the country's more than 3,000 counties. Narrowing the picture to only the youngest Americans, people of color already comprise a majority in the U.S. A recent Brookings Institution analysis of 2018 census data shows that among Americans under the age 15, white people now make up just under 50%. The shift is monumental for a nation that was founded by white English-speaking Europeans and has long, going down to the other page, wrestled with the issues of race and ethnicity and entangled a highly charged debates over immigration. It has also broad implications for the country's economy, its political life, and its identity. This is an important tipping point, says William Frey, the senior demographer of the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C. He describes the change as a transformation from a mostly white baby boomer culture to the more globalized multi-ethnic country that we are becoming. Several factors have contributed to the shift. First, in the past 4 decades, immigration to the U.S. has been highest from countries like Mexico, China, India, and the Philippines, a result of the 1965 Immigration Act, which opened the doors more widely to immigrants from other countries outside Europe. Second, people of color have higher birth rates than white people. And finally, the white population in the U.S. is getting older, and older people tend to have fewer children. Social changes are also driving the shift. The number of mixed-race marriages and, as a result, mixed-race children is on the rise. Multiracial and multi-ethnic Americans are among the fastest-growing demographic groups in the U.S., with more than 11 million people identifying as mixed race in 2018, a 65% increase from 2000. No country in the world has ever experienced such a quick and dramatic racial and ethnic change. So it's still unclear what it will mean for people of color to become the majority in a nation with a large generational divide, a younger generation that's racial and ethnically diverse, and an older generation that's still largely white. A snapshot of change. One can see the social upheaval that accompanies this kind of demographic shift in Yakima. The Yakima Valley, produces so much fruit that farmers have long had trouble finding enough workers to harvest it all. The work is delicate and difficult, and most fruit must be picked by hand. Starting in the 1940s, farmers found a willing workforce, people from Mexico, who began arriving in large numbers to fill wartime labor shortages. In the following decades, many more Mexicans came to escape unemployment and economic hardship from home. Initially, many came to Yakima on temporary work visas and returned home after the harvest. As farms expanded and refrigerated warehousing created year-round jobs, some Mexican workers stayed illegally. By 1986, many participated in President Ronald Reagan's amnesty program and offering a chance for citizenship. Their families grew and became part of the community, while the workers from Mexico and Central America kept coming. And that began to change the face of Yakima. Latino children began populating Yakima classrooms, some arriving with little or no English. In 1999, Yakima Eisenhower High School listed its student body as 23% Latino and 70% white. Today, those numbers are essentially flipped. Eisenhower's student population is 73% Latino and 23% white. I think overall in the school, the change is very evident, says Ortiz, the Eisenhower High student. More people are speaking Spanish. We have clubs that are Hispanic-based. We do events for Hispanics, and at assemblies, we do a lot more translating into Spanish. Duce Gutierrez was born in Yakima and grew up there. The daughter of migrant farm workers, she started school speaking little English. After high school, she got a degree from the University of Washington. In 2015, at the age of 26, she became the first Mexican-American to be elected to Yakima's city council. When Gutierrez was campaigning for office, she had an ugly experience that captures the tensions many older white residents of Yakima feel about their city's changing demographics. She was speaking in Spanish to a group of students who'd volunteered to hand out leaflets in mostly Hispanic neighborhood, when she heard a white woman on her porch across the street yell out, "Go back to Mexico." Issues as old as the nation. Today, new immigrants from Latin America, Africa, and Asia, and other regions take jobs in fields as diverse as farming, healthcare, and high tech. Indeed, immigrants have always played a key role in the nation's growth. From Scottish immigrant Alexander Graham Bell, who invented the telephone in the 19th century, to Russian immigrant Sergey Brin, who co-founded Google in 1998. Still, the racial and ethnic diversity that new immigrants can bring to can be uncomfortable for people in parts of the country that have seen this demographic change only recently, says Mather of the Population Reference Bureau. It's more in areas that haven't seen much diversity in the past, Mather says, where there's this culture shock and concern about the changes that are taking place and what it might mean for our identity, our culture, and our economy. In some ways, these issues are as old as the nation itself. In the 18th century, Benjamin Franklin feared that that his fellow Pennsylvanians, largely a British stock, would be overwhelmed by Germans, who will soon so outnumber us that all the advantages we will not, in my opinion, be able to preserve our language, and even our government will be precarious. And in the 19th and early 20th centuries, a solidly Protestant U.S. was wary of the influx of Catholics and Jews. Indeed, the Irish, Italians, and Eastern Europeans who arrived in droves weren't universally considered white at the time. So who will consider themselves Latino, Black, Asian, or white later this century? With this upward trend in interethnic and interracial marriages, ethnic and racial definitions may be different in 20 or 30 years. We're headed in a direction where I think the categories we might use today to classify people will become less meaningful, Mather says, because we're going to become so much of a melting pot. All right. Very good then. Would everybody for me go right back into Schoology under this executive branch folder? Okay. Can everybody see this under that Unit 6 document? Go ahead and open up. I'm assuming that you already have this one in Notability and you've already been working on that. But what would really help us out is if you would go to this one right here and open up Chapter 8, Section 3. What we're going to be focusing upon now, folks, is the executive branch, but on the state level. Got me? The executive branch, but on the state level. We've already kind of explored how it's a little bit different, right? Okay, at the state level, it's not like we call the leader of the executive branch a president on the state level. We call it a, what do we call that? We call it a governor. We've got a governor, we've got a lieutenant governor. So it looks similar, and the jobs are pretty similar, but let's look at some of those differences. So Section 3 is going to be able to help you out with some of the answers from the Unit 6 document, okay? Now, you guys have this one open here, yes? Good? Okay, I am going to do this for you. So right on this trimester 3 Google presentation, okay, I've already done the first one for you here, and I'm going to ask you to do the rest of these through the reading, okay? So we already know that the governor of Minnesota is Tim Walz. Now, I suggested to you in a YouTube video already that, now I'm not downplaying the importance of the President of the United States, but would you agree at some level, that decisions made by Tim Walz have impacted you a little bit more than decisions made by Donald Trump or Joe Biden? Would you guys agree with that? I mean, especially since this world we're living in right now, right? Okay? I mean, people are either completely for Tim Walz or they hate Tim Walz right now, right? Okay? I'm sure there's been some conversations in your household about that, okay? Why? Because the decisions that Tim Walz makes are going to impact your daily lives a heck of a lot more. And I was really trying to pitch to you that the more local you get with government, the more it impacts your daily life. Would you guys agree with that? Okay. So a couple of requirements that one needs to be, the qualifications of Minnesota, you have to be 25 years old, live in Minnesota for at least 1 year, term limits, none. Is anybody kind of surprised by this? No? Does 25 seem very old to you? Sure doesn't. Sure doesn't. And I don't know. I know a lot of people that look at this and go, 1 year? So you can move here, live here for 1 year, and then you can be governor of Minnesota? Are you comfortable with somebody being governor of Minnesota had they been here only 1 year? They feel like you really embraced their Minnesota roots and know everything there is to know about Minnesota? Well, that's true. But even even for our other elected spots that we've talked about, it's a little more than a year, right? But I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, it's still an elected position, so yeah, whatever. All right. So I'm not going to give you all of the answers, and those of you that know how to access the Try3 Google presentation know how easy it would be for you to just access that right now. But I want you to pull up that reading, and I want you to try to find some of the answers for the rest of that chart. Okay? Any questions about this? This is what we are going to be working on today. Okay? I'm going to review some of these answers with the kids in class today. Those of you that are watching online, you know, access the Try3 Google presentation. You'll find those answers, no problem, or find them from the reading, okay? But then you also, I'm going to give you plenty of time today because you've got another game that you've got to download and you've got to play it before we're done here today, okay? And then also be advised that later in the week, that's when I'll be putting on that, remember how you had an assessment at the end of last unit? Yes? That'll be coming up. So like when I see you guys later in the week, that will be put on there. Okay, so you'll have the vocab blended in with some multiple choice questions that you'll have to complete by the end of the week. Good? All right, have I talked enough today? Okay. That fulfills your online requirement.